Our third step is to use our literature review to refine and purpose and question. Now, one of the things, this is from the presentation I went at to the NETA. During steps 1 and 2, you're going to be doing literature reviews during this whole time. It's just continuing. A lot of these steps are kind of overlapping one another. So we want to use a literature review to determine how others have addressed a question or similar question. Makes sense? If somebody's already done some research on this, we want to see what has been found by others. We want to determine others' perception of the need for the question to be answered. What's perception of others? Because that's what survey research really is perception. We want to provide past outcomes of same or similar studies. It's really key because in our chapter 5 of our study, which is the conclusions, we want to link our results from our study back to the literature of previous studies. Does it agree or support or not support previous studies? Now, one of the things I want to point out, research does not prove anything, okay? Please do not use the word prove in your descriptions of any research. It's called that you've either provided support or they did not provide support for a particular hypothesis or question. Our literature review also provides examples of methodology. Hey, you may come across a study that you're reading and says, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. Well, do that. Just follow what they've done. Maybe change something a little bit in it, and do that study. There's nothing wrong with that, especially for this graduate program. Follow that same study and follow what they did, their methods. It's really helpful. It gives you an idea actually how to conduct research too. And the last thing that research literature reviews help you is to provide standardized and validated survey tools. There may be a questionnaire already out there that will answer a question for you. Oh, there's more that their literature review helps us with. It provides data and information to clarify and refine the research question. So it gets us to narrow our research question, our purpose statement, and our hypothesis. Helps us with that. It may also assist us in determining a working hypothesis for the study. It will help provide insight into possible subtopics that can help us frame the survey instrument. In each one of these subtopics, we want to put into what's called a table of specification. Those are all the constructs that I talked about, all those the details that you're looking at to find out about your particular research question. Then we are going to clarify and refocus our question again. As you can see, this research question keeps getting clarified over and over and over again until you get a good working research question. So we define the main topics for the survey. And it should be directly related to our research question. Our research question should be related, and our survey instrument should be related to one another. That makes sense. We need to define our subtopics or our topics. So those are the things that you're going to ask questions about in your survey questionnaire. So these would be content area, directly related to the research question, that requires specific and in-depth consideration. And all of this creates the content of the survey. As you can see, it takes some time to develop a survey. It takes some work, front-end work, as was said earlier about conducting research. We talked about the table of specification briefly. So we have topics. That's supposed to be from, sorry, spelled that wrong. Topics from table of specification. Again, these are the subtopics that you'll pick up from your literature review. It helps us to delineate the main topics of the survey that are directly related to our research question. It incorporates both topics and subtopics and assist us in development of the appropriate survey items and influence of types of item. Again, we're just making a table of all the main points, main topics, and putting them in a table. It defines the areas of similar content that can be collapsed into independent and dependent variables later to assist in data analysis. So, for example, in our research question that we've had in this example, our independent variables are use of safety equipment, and our dependent variables are incidence of injuries. So that we would make a questionnaire based on the use of safety equipment. We'd ask all sorts of different questions, and within that use of safety equipment, we would have specific content or constraints, and we would get that from our literature review, and we'd be looking for particular questions that we'd want to develop based on the use of safety equipment, and we will link that to, you know, the number of injuries and those type of things. Now, finding an instrument or questionnaire. I really suggest that you don't make your own. It's going to take a lot of work. I would really suggest that if you can find one in a published journal and or book, that would be really great. Something that's already been used in other research. And the main reason why is the validity and reliability is already done. We'll talk about what that is. Actually, it was talked about in previous chapters in the textbook. It's really our best option for this class and this program. You need to get approval from the authors who wrote it. Most journal articles have contact email for the main author. Usually they'll give you who you should contact, and you should contact them, send them an email, and ask if you can use their instrument in Chapter 3, which we'll talk about later in this podcast. You need to make mention that you've received permission to use that questionnaire. You can also modify a published instrument. Again, you'd need to still do the same thing, get approval from the authors. You're not going to have to validate that one or do a pilot test on that, which I'll talk about what that is in a few seconds. You can also look on the internet. Now, a little iffy, make sure that if you're going to do it on the internet and find something on the internet, you need to make sure that the instrument is valid and reliable and actually measures what it's supposed to measure. You should still get approval from the authors and all those type of things. The internet, there's some good stuff on the internet and there's some really bad stuff on the internet. Okay. The last way is, well, they're not really in order. There's another way you can do is develop your own questionnaire instrument. This takes a little bit more work. Yeah, you got to do a pilot test and make sure that is valid and reliable. I'll give you an example of that later on in this presentation. So if you're going to have to develop your own instrument, you will use the table of specifications to ensure that the items included in the survey are appropriate and necessary to answer your research question. You may have some questions on your questionnaire that are a really good question, but it doesn't really help you answer your research question. If it doesn't, get rid of it. The actual types of questions are determined by the type of information desired, the question structure, and actual choice of words. The textbook talks about the different types of questions. The main stuff is the type of questions can be asking questions about the attitude of somebody towards something. It can be their beliefs about something. It can be their opinions about that. It can also be perceptions, which is kind of an opinion. It can also somewhat measure behaviors, at least their opinions of behaviors. You can ask questions about the attributes, which would be attributes and demographics are, to me, are pretty much the same. You know, male, female, age groups, socioeconomic, those type of things. Oh, and so I said this twice. So we have personal, or also known as demographic, age, gender, etc., attitudinal, behavioral, opinions, beliefs. We can use scales, ranking systems, or categorical responses. A scale is typically called a Likert scale, 1 through 5 or something like that. Ranking is you ask the individual to rank based on 1 through 5. You can give them 5 different responses, have them to rank it. Categorical questions, similar to scaled. There's not much difference in my opinion. Is just the scales. I think the scales and the categorical responses are pretty similar. Need to be watch out for sensitive type questions, anything on drugs, sex, mental health, etc. You don't need to ask it, don't ask it. Your questionnaire can have different types of questions, which are again the scale or closed end, or we can have open-ended questions. The closed-ended questions, there are nice advantages of them is you can compare groups pretty easily, provides for anonymity, and they're really easy to administer. And the nice thing with Likert type scales, which are 1 equals this, 2 equals this, 3 all the way to 5 or 7. We have equal number of distances between each score. That would be an interval scale. Another one's ranking. We have some value judgments there, and with some categorical we can only have 2 choices, so it can be limited information. The open-ended question, the advantages of using open-ended, you get deeper responses. The disadvantages, it's really harder to analyze. You have to look for repeated words, repeated phrases, repeated themes. Takes a little bit more work to do that. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just it's different. Here we're going to have 13 different general question and construction considerations for you to think about when you're developing a questionnaire. Ensure that the length and difficulty of questionnaire is realistic. Don't have a questionnaire of 150 questions. You won't get a very good response rate. Think about the time that the person has to put into it. Ensure that all questions in the same format or consistent of no more than 2 format styles. It can get real confusing to people if you have a whole bunch of different styles of questions. Attempt to put all responses on the same place on form for ease of coding. Place completion and return information at the bottom of each page on questionnaire. Remind the people over and over again what they're supposed to do. Provide clear and concise, which means simple and short, directions on top of the first page, and repeat those directions on each page. Make it easy for the people taking the survey. You do the same with scales for consideration at the top of each page and section, meaning give them the directions each time. Ask short questions in a consistent way using simple words. Keep it simple, silly. The KISS principle. Avoid responses that condense ranges. Do not underestimate the knowledge or intelligence of the respondents. Don't assume that they know something. Ensure that later responses are not biased by earlier questions. That's a good one there. Ensure that questions are listed in logical and efficient sequence. This is going to kind of go along with number 12 too. Group similar content questions together unless this will bias the response. And consider possibility of electronic format. I think, to me, this is the way to go. Currently, there is SurveyMonkey. It's not free, but you can do questionnaires on SurveyMonkey and generate a list and have people go into SurveyMonkey and complete the questionnaire. Nice thing, I'll run some descriptive statistics for you. Won't do the statistical analysis, but it will do the descriptive statistics. Some question and construction problems. The question is unclear. The people don't know what the heck they're asking. You have multiple questions of the same thing. Question is wordy. It just has too much in there. What are you really trying to get at? Question is negatively worded. You have overlapping responses. You're asking the same question twice. Unbalanced response options. So let's say you have 4 different subtopics, and then you have 5 in one subtopic and 3 in another subtopic. Or you can have responses where you have 1 to 5 in one area, but 1 to 7 in another area. That doesn't work too good. Mismatch between questions and answers. Questions include only technical language. I mean, they would have to be an expert to understand it. Not all questions are applicable to all the participants, and that's really a bad thing to have. Okay, you're going to get ready to survey your individuals. There's some things that you need to make sure that you have ready in order to actually conduct a survey. One of the things is a cover letter that includes acknowledgement or consent, or cover letter and a consent form. Now, if you're doing a survey, you're going to have to get informed consent. You're going to have to go through IRB, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you need to have a cover letter, and obviously your questionnaire. Your cover may need to have a title. If you make it attractive, you can probably get more people involved. You need to have general directions, how to actually conduct the questionnaire, and name of address of sponsoring institution. In the textbook, page 277, there's an example of a cover letter, and you can read that. Can also, you need to provide self-addressed and stamped envelopes. They should not have to pay to turn in the survey. Here are some components for the cover letter. You want to provide the respondents with overview of purpose of the questionnaire, but don't make it biased. What that means is don't give them so much information that they already know what you're trying to get them to do. In the letter, you want to provide the sponsorship. That would be Fresno Pacific University for this. Method of respondent selection. That is, you are conveniently selected, your telephone call, or wherever, how you went about getting your subjects. Let them know that all their responses they'll be kept anonymous. Their answers will not be provided to anybody else, and that should be included in the informed consent form that they'll have. And if you look at the example of the informed consent, you'll see that that's been written in there. You need to tell them how long it will take them to complete the survey. You might want to take it yourself, or have somebody you know take it. So see how long it takes. If it takes 10 minutes, tell them 10 minutes. If it takes 15 minutes, tell them 15 minutes, so they know how long it takes. What's the incentive for helping you? Sometimes one individual win a $50 gift card or something like that, or whatever, some kind of incentive to help you out. Other things is you need to provide appropriate definitions or terms that the respondent must understand to complete the survey. These are operational definitions. This may or may not be something you need to write, but sometimes you need to. You need to really focus on the importance of the study and participation. You need these people to fill out your questionnaire. You need their help. You need to really stress that. You also need to provide clear and concise directions. They need to know what they're supposed to do, how to do it. Don't assume that they know what to do. Provide clear direction, especially if you're going to send it to somebody who they're going to give it to other people. Like you're going to send it to a coach, and they're going to get it to their student athletes, and they need to be clear on what you want them to do. Always include in notable type when and how the survey must be returned. Make it specific. This needs to be returned on October 1, 2007. multiple places, remind them over and over again.